Welcome to module number 6, Tax Lien Investing Exposed, Wealth Professors, www.wealthprofessors.com. That's us. So let's talk about acquiring the property, right? This is also called the holy grail of tax liens. This is when we've either waited out the redemption period or we gamed the system, if you remember from previous modules. And what we're going to wind up doing here, this is where we actually foreclose on the properties, get the properties, look for identification signs that some properties might have a higher degree of non-redemption possibility, because the non-redemption possibility is where we're going to get the properties. So that's what we're after. So acquiring the property is a non-redemption strategy, right? So here's the thing. You remember the states that are offering the tax lien certificates? We talked about those states, and what we're not doing is buying a tax deed, right? A regular deed. If we're in Texas, we're buying a redeemable deed, right? And that acts and feels and tastes and smells just like a regular tax lien, right? So Texas, we do the redeemable deeds. Remember, 6-month redemption period, 25% on that, and that's where we're going to get those properties. That's that 6-month turn. So we're not going to go through all the states again, but remember, okay, in your state-by-state guides, okay, with your county-by-county, all the 5,000 counties, you've got all that information. And so what you're going to be doing now is dialoguing with some of those people, the tax collectors and the clerks in those counties that you have that information on, once you've decided which states are more advantageous for you. But this is, okay, now we're talking about acquiring the property, actually getting the properties, getting the real estate, and we're starting with the tax lien certificates, right? And what you want to do is then transform those certificates into a piece of physical property, right? So this is what it is. So first thing, we'll talk about the odds a little bit. Okay, what are the regular odds for regular investors that do that, right? The vast majority of tax liens do redeem, meaning the vast majority of the taxpayers, right, actually wind up paying their taxes. But still, nationwide, somewhere around 1 up to 3% of the liens do not redeem. Right, and that's just as a matter of course that they don't redeem. The idea is for us, if what we're after is a non-redemption strategy, if we want those properties, we want to be in that 1 to 3 percentile, right? So understand that. But just understand this, is that if something does redeem, that's not a bad day, right? Any day that you can put money up and wait 6 months and get it all back and get 25% on your investment, well, that's a darn good day. And the only investment that I know that does that consistently and guaranteed is tax liens, right? So let's get right into this, right? So what you understand, that even with those kinds of odds, that 3 in 100 with a lot of upside and virtually no downside is a gamble that's certainly worth taking, right? It's not a risk, it's a gamble, meaning you don't know if you're definitely going to get the property. But remember, like what we said, that that either you're going to get all of your money back plus interest, or you're going to wind up with the property, right? That's what we're talking about here. So we're going to talk about scenarios where it's more and more likely that you'll get the property as opposed to just getting the interest, right? So the question is then, is it just luck, dumb luck, or is there a method? Well, in my case, I can tell you that there are methods. And a billionaire mentor of mine said to me, George, the harder I work, the luckier I get. The harder I work, the luckier I get. Meaning you've got to put your nose to the grindstone. You've got to do your due diligence. You have to know what the earmarks are. What are the signs of non-redemption? What are we going to look for, right? Well, so understand that, in tax liens, it's like life. The harder you work, the luckier you get, right? So you want to do your due diligence, right? So it kind of goes like this. There's a formula. Due diligence plus education equals better odds, right? So what we want to do, right, at Wealth Professors, we want to mitigate your risk. which we've done with this tax lien program, Tax Liens Exposed, and at the same time we want to have you explode your income, where you're making so much money with this, where you're getting the properties for that 5 and 10 and 15 cents on the dollar. Due diligence plus education equals better odds, right? So let's look for the telltale signs of a potential acquisition, right? That's where we're going right now. What are they, right? What does it look like, right? So these are the potential lien non-redemption telltale signs, right? So what makes a scenario like this? What is a scenario that it's more and more likely that the property will not redeem? Non-redemption means that we get the property, meaning we then become the owner of that property for just the price of the taxes, right? So that's it. Remember, if we're buying a tax lien certificate for $1,000 against a piece of property that's worth $100,000, and we get that piece of property for that thousand, and it's worth $100,000. Boy, that's a score. It's a score if we paid $5,000 on a tax lien and the property is worth $100,000, and it's a score if we paid $10,000 on a tax lien and the property was worth $100,000, because that's only 10 cents on the dollar, and that does not exist anywhere else. There are people, they hear this and they think they're going to get the property for like 1 cent on the dollar every time. That's not going to happen. So sometimes it might be 1%, sometimes it might be 5%, sometimes it might be 10%. Hey, those are all good numbers. 15% on the dollar is great. 20% on the dollar is fantastic. Anything, up to 25% on the dollar is a fantastic price. So here are some of the things, or some of the telltale signs that you can look for. It's a property with no mortgage, right? Why is that? So chances are, if somebody has a tax lien that's outstanding and there's no mortgage, okay, that means there's nobody to escrow that mortgage payment, right? Escrow the payment and pay the taxes from it. That's number one. Number two, there's no reminder, right? There's no reminder that's coming to the house every month, right? So that person doesn't know that they have to pay the taxes, and so that's just there. Just understand that. So if no mortgage, it increases your possibility of non-redemption, which means then it increases your possibility of getting the property, right? A vacant property. If the property is vacant, right, that increases the possibility of non-redemption. Which then, if it increases the possibility of non-redemption, that means it increases the possibility of you getting the property. So then you look at this, right, and you start to add. Maybe you've got one or two of these factors combined, right? What if there's a property with no mortgage, right, and it's also vacant? So you have those two things. That really increases the possibility of you getting the property, right? So you start understanding that. So also, if there's a property with a mortgage from a private lender or a small bank, right, a smaller mortgage, right, with a smaller bank, that increases the possibility of you getting the property. Also, of course, where there's a divorce involved, if the owners of the property are getting a long, ugly, nasty divorce, what happens is each person is spiting the other person. They're fighting. They're not paying attention to their finances. Nobody cares, and people just let things go. It's an ugly thing. It's very sad. Okay, but it's a fact that properties that are involved in divorce, right, have a higher degree of non-redemption, right? And then, of course, if a property is owned by an elderly person, that person might be in a nursing home or something like that, or somebody is supposed to be watching that person's finances, their son or their nephew. The person can be in their 90s, and the son or nephew, they're in their 70s or their 60s, and they've got other things to do, or they may be sick themselves, right, and they just miss it, right? There's no mortgage. The property is owned by somebody elderly, so these things miss, and they all combine together to make this batter for the greater possibility of a non-redemption. So these are some of those factors, right? So you've got this combination of things. You have a combination of these factors, and understand, so if you buy liens where you've got more and more of these factors involved, you increase your chances of getting those properties then for the pennies on the dollar, for that non-negotiated buy, right, or the non-negotiated takeover of those properties, because you're buying a tax lien, right? So you're paying the taxes on the property by buying that tax lien. You're making the county very happy, and at the end of the redemption period, you wind up with this property just for the amount of taxes that are due. And these are the pieces that will help you identify, okay, which properties have a higher chance, a higher possibility, a higher degree of non-redemption, which means then you can get those properties, right? Which means that that's what you want for the 2 and 3 and 4 or 5 and 10 cents, 15 cents on the dollar, right? So what kind of due diligence should you do, right? We've been talking about due diligence, and of course, when we're doing the over-the-counters, we're doing things where properties, are left over, and people think, well, maybe all the good ones are gone. Well, you want to make sure that you do a pretty good amount of cursory due diligence. You want to do it first. You want to do as much as you can online, right, through online sources. You want to do as much research on the tax lien as you possibly can in as little time as possible, because you don't want to be spending all day researching this stuff. But at the same time, you have to do it. You can search the public records on each property right from the list, from the tax lien list that'll come right from the county. You can do that. You usually get it through the county records. It's almost always online, right? If you need to, you can, of course, in your state-by-state and county-by-county books that you get with the courses, 800 pages for you to go through. You can pick one of the counties, and you can ask them, okay, how to access the public records, right? And you can talk to the tax collector, and the tax collector will send you some information. And if they have a website, they'll give you the website, that kind of thing. But you want to be able to do this as quickly as possible. Now, if you want to acquire a property, what you want to do is have some sort of a marking system that allows you to flag what's good for you and what's not good for you. Now, when we say not good for us just means that it has a lower degree of non-redemption, because you want the higher degree of non-redemption because you want the properties. It doesn't mean that those tax liens are bad, right? But, we don't mind. I mean, it's not a loss when something redeems in 6 months and you get 25% on your money in 6 months. That's not a loss, right? That's not something bad. But we know for us, okay, that's a give, right? I mean, that's the kind of thing. 24% in 6 months, or 25% in 6 months, or 18% a year, or 16% a year, right? That's the give for us as tax lien investors, right, when we're following the system. But what we want to do is increase our odds of getting a property, and that is then called a non-redemption strategy. So you want to have some sort of a marking system, so you're marking off, what you like, right, and then what you don't like, right? So you may want to try this. Draw a line through any property that's got a mortgage from a large bank, right? So it doesn't mean that you're not going to get that, but it's more and more likely that if the mortgage is on the property from one of the larger banks, it's possible that the taxes are being escrowed, which means that there's a higher degree of that'll just be regular redemption. Remember, you're never losing. It's just a higher degree of a redemption possibility, which means that that if the taxpayer doesn't pay all the taxes and redeem, that if the bank has been escrowing the money, the bank will then step up to the plate, and the bank will redeem. The bank will pay because the bank wants to protect that mortgage. They want to protect their investment. Doesn't mean that you won't get the property, but there's just a less of a likelihood that you will with a large bank than you will with a small bank. And what you can do then, you've got the line through the property that's got a mortgage on it with a large bank. Put a star next to any property that has no mortgage, right? We talked about that earlier, right? If there's no mortgage mortgage on the property, stick a star right next to it. So that's the star system. Double the star, put 2 stars next to the property. If the taxes are higher than a few $1,000s a year and only one person is listed as the owner, right? So these are the scenarios that'll increase your chances of getting a non-redemption, meaning you'll get the property. Then research the starred and double starred properties on an online map. Go to Zillow.com, look at some of the values on that. Go to Google Maps. You can go to Google Earth, right, and actually take a physical look at the property. Get as much information as you can online without getting lost in the process. You want to do as much as you can, and you want to look at this, and again, all right, you'll see then whether or not the property has a mortgage, how much the mortgage is for. You can find all those things online, so that's good. Now, when you do this, right, and you've done your initial due diligence, you can go to the treasurer's office. That treasurer can become your new best friend, and you don't want to make a pest out of yourself, but you can go and you can ask then about the specific properties that you have starred. You've done some work on it, and what you can do is you can ask the treasurer, right? You can ask them if they know that if those properties in questions are very often late on paying their taxes. If they are, right, then you'll know that that they're more likely to redeem. Remember, if they're more likely to redeem, that means you get all of your money back plus interest. It's not a bad thing, but that means maybe you don't want to buy those. If you're working a non-redemption strategy, it means you want the properties. So you wouldn't buy then the tax liens on those properties where there's a higher degree of redemption, where they're going to pay the taxes. You want to buy the tax liens on the properties where there's a lower degree of redemption, because you don't want them to redeem, because instead of getting all of your money back plus interest, what you want is the actual property. You want the actual real estate, and you do that through this non-redemption strategy. At that point, what you could do is you could do a drive-by. If you really feel that you might be able to close on the property, that you're going to get it, right? By all means, get in the car and go drive by. There's nothing wrong with that, right? If you're working locally, right? I wouldn't drive by 30 properties. I wouldn't do anything like that. If indeed you really think that that there's a property, it's out of state, right, and you want to take another look at it. You've done your online due diligence with the county. You've done your online due diligence with Zillow, Google Earth, that kind of thing. If you wanted to order a broker price opinion, you could do that. You could order a broker price opinion on the property and have a look-see at the property that way. A broker price opinion will cost you like anywhere between $30 and $75 for each one, but you don't want to be going crazy doing all kinds of BPOs, broker price opinions, paying for that if you're not pretty sure that you've got a good shot at non-redemption, at getting the property. But that's a wonderful way to add to your strategy and your due diligence. And understand this: when you get one of those properties, let's say you live in Florida and you're doing this in Texas, or you live in New York and you're doing this in Florida, the real estate broker that did the BPO, the broker price opinion, is a wonderful source for you to list that property with. You tell them, that once you get that property, you list it with them for half price. And when you say to them, well, I've got this property, I just took over, I just got the deed to it, and it's worth $100,000, and they ask you, well, how much would you like to list it for? And you tell them, well, I don't want to list it, I just want to sell it. I'd like to sell it for $50,000. And do you know anybody? And right away they're going to say, how about me? If they're in a position, they'll buy that property immediately. And believe me, you're the type of person they want to work with, because you're the type of seller that's not unreasonable. You just want to blow the property out and get the cash in your pocket. So that's one of the uses of this system like that. That's what I do. right? And even with my agency, we're in New York. We do broker price opinions for banks. We do that all the time. It's part of the distressed real estate business, and we just added that to the tax liens as an investment piece to add to our due diligence when we're getting properties around the country. So the thing is, you want to think like an entrepreneur. When you see a property without a mortgage and you see that it has a high tax bill, right? Do you see more than a lien? I would hope so. I hope you see a potential for a huge windfall profit, right? And then, consider, an investment property. Doing a strategy like this as well, right? Think about those commercial properties that we're talking about in the earlier modules. If you've answered yes to these questions, right, there's other ways to acquire the property you can do too. You can use the list that you get from the county. And just understand that sometimes if people get into debt, they can't get out, and the tax lien just becomes one more debt, right? And if somebody, a single person, they can be a married person, right? But especially a single person, if they have no mortgage and a big tax bill, don't assume that they're going to pay it. Don't assume that they can pay it, right? But you might have a really wonderful opportunity, a unique opportunity to help somebody get out of the debt while still purchasing the property for a fraction of its value. You can make a deal with them on there just from having this information, just from looking at it. In those 800 pages, you'll be able to call the counties. You'll be able to get this information. You'll have that stuff, right? So, think of this, differently. Think of it in a number of different ways. Buying the tax lien and then turning that into a very, very large interest rate at the end of a redemption period. Buy the tax lien and wait and hope that somebody or buy that liens that are closer to the end of the redemption period. Maybe somebody redeems in a day or 2 days. Like in Florida, you get that minimum of 5%, and you get that 1,825% return in annualized. It's just absolutely fantastic. You can do these different things, right? But it all comes from this tax lien fountain, so to speak, right? It can grow into all these other areas. So this is just the tip of that iceberg, right? So you can do a number of different strategies, right? You can close a deal with a property owner who's in distress, right? And just understand that that's not what this particular course is all about. That's not what that is, but that's what Wealth Professors also does. We've got other courses designed to teach you how to negotiate things. We've got all that. We've got a wealth of free material that's on our wealthprofessors.com site. It's www.wealthprofessors.com, WealthProfessors.com. You can keep going there, and we're committed to our students' success, but we want to make sure that people are working on the road to wealth, and at the same time they can take a couple of different roads. I just love this tax lien road because it has this piece of non-negotiated sale. So that if you don't want to be a negotiator, if you're tired of negotiating, you can follow these rules, follow these suggestions, right? These indicators that there's a higher degree of possibility, and it increases the probability of you getting these properties for pennies on the dollar. That non-redemption strategy, right? That's why I love that. And you can follow those things, but understand that you can use the information that you can get from this course and the things from calling the county and having these lists, right, that you can also use that to identify, right, a seller that might need your help, and you can deal with them on a motivated seller basis, right? So that the tax lien can be more than just an interest rate if you know how to spot, right, and close the deal, right? That's really what it's all about, right? So that you do that. Now, let's go into the auction again when we do that, right? Just remember, right, what you're doing is you're proceeding in the same manner you otherwise would, with one exception. You may be more flexible on bidding down the interest rate if you're looking for a property. If you're only looking right? At the interest rate, you're not, you don't want to bid too low because you don't want the property. You want the higher interest rate. Remember, we were talking about that in the earlier modules. But now when we look at it and you say, hey, wait a minute, if I want the property, I can actually bid down the interest rate a little more. I don't mind if it goes to 10%. I don't mind if it goes to 8% or 7% or 6%, even if it goes down to where like a regular CD is, right? It's not so terrible for me because either I'll get that money back plus that return, but I put myself in a position of being more likely to acquire that deed, right? Because that's what you're after, right? And that's what we're talking about in this module, is to put the information together and work the system, right? And gain things in a certain way, do things in a certain way that we wind up with the deeds to these properties, right? So what you want to do in all of this, right, when you're working a non-redemption strategy especially, is that you want to keep an eye on your time, right? In some of the states and the counties, you can begin the foreclosure proceedings in as little as 6 months, right? We talked about that, right? In some of the states where 6 months is, is when the alarm clock goes off, and you can begin the foreclosure proceeding. And some of them is just, it's automatic, right? Some of them it's automatic, it just happens automatically, and some of them you have to foreclose, right? So some states automatically transfer the deed into your name after the redemption time has expired, and some you have to do the foreclosure, right? So the one that's automatic, you don't have to do anything, but if you have to begin the foreclosure proceedings, right, what you want to do is, number one, notify the appropriate county that you wish to foreclose. You're going to let them know, okay, I have this tax lien certificate. You're going to do it on the phone, and you're going to do it with a legal notice. You're going to wind up with an attorney that'll do this for you. They'll take care of the whole thing, but this is the process. Number two, you publish a legal notice of imminent foreclosure in the local newspaper, right? Number three, you pay a small administrative fee to the county, right? It may be $100, could be $200, it could be $400, whatever. It could be $1,000. But here's the thing: that fee, if there's a property that's worth $100,000, and you're paying a fee of $1,000 on top of a lien that you have for $2,000, and that means that you have $3,000 into it. And even if you had an attorney and you had to pay an attorney another $2,000, right? You're talking $5,000 for a $100,000 property. Let's not be ridiculous here, right? This is this is phenomenal money. So, I mean, this is not the time to get cheap, because you're basically getting the property for free, right? I mean, when you're talking about, you have a tax lien for $1,000, and you're getting a $50,000 property or a $100,000 property for $1,000. I mean, for $1,000, I mean, what can you buy for that? A television set? When you're buying houses for the same prices as a TV, I mean, let's be real about it, right? So, and then you send the notice to the property owner. And five, if the bank that owns the mortgage or that holds the mortgage does not step up to the plate and pay all the fees and interest, right, you will become the rightful owner of the property. That mortgage will become extinguished. It will go away. The bank has to take that action and has to come up and redeem and pay, right? So that's the only way. So that means then the bank would pay the county, and then the county would pay you, and then you don't get the property. But here's the thing: you're always going to get either all of your money back plus the interest, or you're going to get the property. So that's the foreclosure proceedings, right, in a nutshell. And just understand, okay, there's some other things, and these are the tips, is that you should always hire a lawyer, right? You don't really want to make a mistake. You don't really need to do this yourself. You could do it yourself. I don't. I use an attorney, right? I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. And hey, I'll just say it again. You have a tax lien. Let's say you paid $3,000 for the tax lien, and the property is worth $100,000, and you pay $2,000 for the attorney. That's $5,000. And let's say if there's another pile of fees with the county, and it's $1,000 or even $2,000, you have $7,000 in a $100,000 house. That means you paid 7 cents on the dollar. This is not the time to nitpick and say, I knew it, there's a catch. I'm not getting the house that's worth $100,000 for 10 cents. I'm paying $10,000 for a $100,000 house. Look, people wish they could be you in being able to do that, because now at this stage, and using the information that you have, okay, that's there, that those 800 pages, and calling the counties, you're going to be able to, when you get these properties for pennies on the dollar, you're going to be the person that's going to be able to sell the properties for half price and make a huge profit. Right? And that's the key to success in a down market. Okay, in an up market, it's very easy, because you can just sell it to anybody as prices are going up. But in a flat and down market, which is where we are at the moment, if you're the person that has a property that's worth $100,000 and you can sell it for $50,000 because you only paid $10,000 for it, are you kidding me? You're making money hand over fist, and everybody's your best friend, right? So what you don't want to do is interact with those owners, right? It's gone beyond the redemption period, right? So they've had their chance. It's over. It's too bad, so sad. I'm not callous about it, but that's where it is. You've got nothing to gain by speaking with those previous owners. Nothing, right? And you should be happy. You should be thrilled. You should be grateful. You should be thanking your lucky stars at this point, because you now have beaten the odds, and you've gotten this property for the 3 or the 4 or the 5 cents on the dollar, or the 10 cents on the dollar. You have it, and you should really feel great about your decision, right? Because you will have a property. You've done it, right? Now, let's have some closing observations, right, on this last module here, right? Just understand that tax liens are a great vehicle for safely storing your money and earning high interest. That's number one, right? Remember, number one, don't lose your money, right? Now, the other piece is that you want to get yourself a very fat and substantial interest rate or return, ROI, on your investment on a regular basis. Tax liens do that. So number one, you don't lose your money. Number two, you get a very substantial and fat return interest rate on your money, guaranteed. And then number three, you put yourself in the way of a gigantic windfall. Being able to get one of these properties for 3 or 4 or 5 cents, 10 cents on the dollar, absolutely fantastic. People will wish they could be you, right? Every time I get a property and I sell it for half price, everybody's my best friend, right? They think that I'm a little crazy, but at the same time, I'm saying, yeah, crazy like a fox, because I can sell it at half price. I can do what others cannot. Right? And if you could sell properties for half price in a down market, you're making a lot of people happy. I just sell to investors. I just sell to another investor. Other people are going around, they're trying to figure out how they can find properties for half price. I'm just selling them for half price, right? They don't have to do anything. They just have to buy them from me. That's all. I have them. I have the properties, right? So don't invest in a tax lien certificate believing that you will acquire the deed each and every time. But be thrilled when you do. Right? Only invest what you can afford to lose access to for that period of time. Meaning, if it's a 6-month redemption period, right, you're not going to be able to grab that money for 6 months. It's going to be tied up in that property for the 6 months. But you got to agree with me that it's worth waiting 6 months for either getting all your money back plus 25% or getting the property. Right? That's what you have to look at it. Don't be afraid to cross the state lines. If you're in New York, yeah, you can buy in Texas, you can buy in Florida, you can buy in Montana, you can buy in Mississippi, you can buy all over the country. There's no problem. If you're in Florida, you can buy, in Texas. If you're in Florida, you can buy in Washington D.C. If you're in D.C., you can buy in Florida. Don't worry about it. There are hundreds and hundreds of tax liens that are out there available for you, right? And what I want you to know is that you've made a fantastic decision. We're here to help you. We have our continuing support. Please go to www.wealthprofessors.com, right, and enroll in whatever other support programs that we have. We've got a lot of free resources. Take advantage of all the free stuff that we have. And here's the thing. And what I love to do, I love selling properties for half price. I love it. Okay, I love selling properties that I properties that I can sell for $40,000 that are worth $70,000 and $80,000. I love it, okay? And I've gotten them so cheap. I mean, it makes you very, very popular. You guys will be able to do the same thing. You just have to work at it, right? Again, this is George Fuchs, Wealth Professors. I want you to have good luck doing this. I want you to have good health doing this. And I want you to have good wealth doing this. Thank you. Take good care. Goodbye.